All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Darcy Carlson, and I'm the Director of Education Consultants at Britannica. And we've heard a lot from some of you already, and I want to encourage you to keep those conversations going throughout the webinar and ask questions in that chat box. Make sure that you're setting the chat to be sent to all panelists and attendees. That way everyone can see your questions. Or you can also use the Q&A section. Either one works. I'll be moderating the chat along with Danielle from Pear Deck. And we're all really looking forward to sharing these resources with you today. Last year, Britannica and Pear Deck teamed up to pair the trusted content of Britannica Launchpacks with the engagement of Pear Deck. And both of the resources we're going to be looking at today, so both Pear Deck with the premium tools along with Britannica Launchpacks, are being provided for free during this time of COVID-19. So we're going to be sharing with you how you can gain access to that with a follow-up email as well as during the chat today. And today we are going to be looking at some of the best practices in using both of these resources together to support virtual learning. Facilitating that conversation today are our presenters, Kellie Johns, who is a former educator and Assistant Director of Education Consultants from Britannica, as well as Nick Park, who is the Director of Sales and Regional Partnership Manager at Pear Deck. And both Kellie and Nick work with educators from around the country to engage them in the use of education technology. And with that, Nick, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Darcy, and nice to meet everyone virtually. It looks like Texas is in the house, a nice showing from Texas, which isn't surprising. Texas always shows up big. So like Darcy said, I am Nick with Pear Deck. I'm going to kick things off from the Pear Deck perspective, and then I'll turn things over to Kellie about halfway through for Britannica. So as far as a quick agenda goes, like I said, I'm going to get us started with looking at Pear Deck, understanding what Pear Deck is, how you can use it to engage your students during this time of remote online virtual learning. And then we'll flip it over to Kellie so she can talk about Launchpacks. If you haven't already got a chance to see those are amazing. She's gonna walk you through those. And then we're gonna do what we're here for, to see how those two things play together and how you can use Launchpacks as assignments during this period of remote online learning, to assign those to your students and keep them engaged. I think one of the themes that we're hearing a lot right now is repeatable lessons and activities that can be assigned to students either on a daily or weekly basis. And these Launchpacks powered by Pear Deck are certainly that. So if you haven't seen them yet, we're excited to share it with you. And then, as Darcy said, we'll keep an eye on that chat throughout our time here together. So feel free to ask a question if you have it, and we'll be happy to help you out. But also know that we'll try to do our best to leave as much time as possible at the end of the webinar today for dedicated Q&A. So if you have any questions that you want to hold till the end, we'll make sure that we address those as we go. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and dive into Pear Deck here. Just curious to know how much you already know about Pear Deck. And for those of you who might have joined late or didn't see the instructions before, I'm going to go ahead and post those instructions on the screen so you can be sure to join. And I'm going to post that link in the chat as well. So I'm just going to say join us here. So if you haven't been able to join as a student, feel free to go ahead and do that. And I can see that we have 83 of us joined in and 49 responses now at this point. So I know my exact level of student engagement at this point from a Pear Deck perspective. And I'll go ahead and just share these results with you live in real time to do some real-time polling to see what our familiarity is with Pear Deck. And it looks like we have the majority of us use it and love it. So this should make my job really easy. You guys know what you're doing. But about half of us are kind of, either new to Pear Deck or have just tried it out, haven't used it a ton. So if you've maybe tried Pear Deck in the past in the traditional physical classroom that we all used to know, we'll share some tips and tricks on how to use it in the remote learning environment, whether that's synchronously as we're doing now with video conferencing, or whether that's asynchronously in student pace mode. So just a little bit about us. Pear Deck, we're on a mission to help teachers deliver powerful learning moments to every student every day. And so really emphasizing every student every day, not just your front row students who you're used to hearing from every day and are the first to shout out the answer, but also the students that you don't hear from for whatever reason. You know, maybe they're shy, maybe there's a language barrier, maybe they just don't feel comfortable speaking up and participating in class. You're able to give students a voice through the comfort of their own device, and now quite literally in the reality that we're all living in, you're giving them a voice through the comfort of their own homes because you're meeting them where they have to be met, like literally where they have to be met, not where they expect to be met, where they have to be met. So giving students a voice during this time of remote learning, obviously super, super important. So before we get too much farther, just wanted to ask you all on your student screen, what best describes your current remote learning environment for instruction? Or are you more of that synchronous classroom where you're able to do video conferencing like we are right now using Zoom or Google Meet, Microsoft Teams? Or are you more assigning lessons like maybe like a Launchpack at the beginning of the week or at the beginning of the day? Or maybe a little hybrid of both. So we'll go ahead and show these as well. Not surprisingly, it looks like, you know, not a ton of us are able to just do dedicated live synchronous instruction. That's not unique to this group. It looks like at some point we're leveraging a little bit of asynchronous learning at some point. So I'm gonna say this a couple more times throughout our time here today, but within Pear Deck, I have the ability to show or hide responses, and you can see that on the bottom of my screen. But what I'm gonna reference a few times is on the bottom right-hand corner, we have 3 little dots, and every time you see 3 little dots, I certainly recommend clicking on it because there's always good stuff behind it. And behind our 3 little dots, we have student pace mode. So up until this point, this has been an instructor-paced lesson. Now, when I launch a Pear Deck lesson or activity with my students, I get to pick. Do I want to be instructor-led, where I control the flow and the pace? Or do I want to flip my classroom and turn this over to students, where they can go through a lesson at their own pace? And that's totally up to you, whatever is the best fit for you and your students. Since I had your attention today at the beginning of our time, I thought I would launch this instructor pace, but I'm going to flip it over to you and turn it over to you in just a second. Now, final question from me, just so we can kind of get an understanding of who's in the room and what your scenario looks like. If you could, you can actually just draw right on top of your screen. So you can just circle right on top of that device that your learners might have access to. And so there are a lot of us today. So this is going to get out of hand very, very quickly. And it looks like it already has. So I'm gonna lock your screens. And I should have done that much earlier, because as you can see from my screen that I'm sharing, things got out of hand very quickly. So I apologize for those of you who didn't get a chance to respond there. Now I'm choosing to show these overlaid with about 100 responses. Hopefully nobody has a classroom of about 100 students. Things can get kind of messy here, but now breaking those out into a grid, looking at these as maybe individual worksheets, I can see all of my students are annotating on top of the screen. But it looks like, based on our overlaid view, that we have access to about every device under the sun, which is a good thing because Pear Deck works with all devices. Now, one thing you're probably noticing here is that this is a little bit different, right, than your normal traditional presentation tool like a Google Slides or PowerPoint. And that's because there are a few different views within Pear Deck. We have your student view, and that's what you guys are seeing here. And in your student view, you're looking at my screen, which we normally would kind of consider the projector within the traditional classroom. And you're also working on your own screen, which is your view, where you're responding, you're circling the devices, you're answering multiple choice questions. But then there's also a teacher view as well. And I was sneaky, and I hid this off the screen from you guys. Now, down in my 3 little dots that I referenced earlier, that's where you can get to your dashboard. And I was sneaky because I pulled this off the screen when we started, and I can open up my dashboard on a new window or another device, but I hid that from you guys as my students. And so I had this hidden off the screen here. Now nothing looks very different from what you're seeing as a student. at this point, but I can see my student roster, which is just everyone who has signed in today and joined us. So everyone who has joined us today, I get my roster built out just from you all signing in using your email address. And I get that nice little social emotional learning check, that mood check at the beginning to see how everyone's doing. Now, what I've been doing along the way that you haven't gotten to see from my superpower, from my dashboard, which is really the secret sauce of Pear Deck, is not just how my students are responding, but who's responding. And so knowing that Felice, Jeffrey, Judy, and Teresa are new to Pear Deck, which is totally fine. To hover over those responses and see not only how students are participating, who is participating, and seeing that data come in real time, which is important, real time. So even in this remote learning environment where we are not all together inside of the four walls of your classroom, you're still able to see your students work. You're still able to see your students process in real time as they go through questions. And the same goes for our drawing. So if anyone got a little anxiety or nervousness seeing student drawings up in front of the board, you have the ability there to pick and choose which responses you want to show and highlight and feature in front of the room. You get all of those controls from this teacher view on the back end. So if I really only wanted to show Megan's response and Sherry's response and Teresa's response, I could do that from my dashboard behind the scenes and show that up in front of my classroom. So I just wanted to let you know that that view did exist. I'm sure there are questions in the chat around, hey, can you see student names? Because y'all are educators and you know that that's the most important piece, is knowing who said what. And so although Pear Deck is always anonymous from that classroom perspective, for very intentional reasons, you get the data behind those responses. And that goes, that's true for all things Pear Deck within Pear Deck, any activity or lesson that you would do with kids, and also these Launchpacks that we're going to talk about in just a minute. So 2 quick gut checks, and then we're gonna flip the classroom and turn it over to you guys so you can run through the lesson on your own. So on your student screen, I wanted to do a quick gut check to see if in fact we all agree that every student deserves a voice. Hopefully we do. Somewhat of a softball question here. So I'm seeing that for the most part, we do in fact agree that every single student deserves a voice. Thank goodness. We'll see that visual up in front of the room on my screen. All right, every student deserves a voice. So I took this template. Pear Deck provides hundreds of templates for you to use and choose from. I took this template and I tweaked the prompt. So same prompt, or I'm sorry, same template, different prompt. So now not every student deserves a voice, but how about every student is heard? Every student is heard. Now I'm seeing a very different picture, which is that we don't all agree on this one. We have a wide range of responses. We're all over the place. Maybe every student is heard, but not all the time, or maybe not every student is heard all the time. And the disparity between those two responses, every student deserves a voice, agree, every student is heard, not so sure, is exactly why we built Pear Deck, which was to give every single student a voice. So again, not just those students who you're used to hearing from in the classroom, but the students that don't participate for whatever reason or don't feel comfortable participating, you're able to give them a voice, even in this remote distance learning environment. Now, at the same time, the beauty of that is that not only are you hearing from every student, but that becomes a deeper insight behind that engagement. So a deeper insight being data. So even if it's just a quick check for understanding, are you ready to move on? Yes or no? Do you have any questions? Are you ready for the quiz tomorrow? Whatever it is, every single time you ask a question within Pear Deck, including using the Launchpacks that you'll see in a minute, becomes a data point that you'll have with you moving forward. So you get that in real time, but that's also saved and stored in your Pear Deck account, so you can see that later and review responses, maybe like in a planning period. But you know, what really is a planning period these days? It's kind of 24/7, right? So I mentioned that I launched this session in instructor paced mode, right? I launched this session in instructor paced mode. Now, that might not be the best scenario for your class. So it just totally depends on what's best for you, your learners, the technology that they have access to, maybe even if it's just like a Wi-Fi connection or what. So just keep in mind that you can always toggle between these responses as we go. Now, because you all are already signed in, you won't need to do anything to join this in student pace mode. We'll just give you a link right here to get started. Now, I'm not gonna give you control just yet while I've got you, but I wanted to little tip you off there, preview that for just a second so you could see that I could toggle between along the way. So I referenced templates earlier, and we have a template library now that exists of hundreds of templates that you can choose from. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of those here. Starting with, very elementary, circle the items that start with B or start with ba. And we could share those up in front of the room. Now, for those of you who may be high school teachers, maybe we even have some folks at the collegiate level, this might seem a little too elementary. Now keep in mind with our templates is that you can always edit these and make these your own. So again, before things get too out of hand, I'm going to lock screens again. So sorry to cut the folks off who were having way too much fun on that slide. But keep in mind that think of this as a canvas that your students are annotating on top of, So this could be a math equation. This could be a plant cell. This could be a sentence where you're going in and annotating on top. A digital worksheet, if you will. And I know worksheet is kind of a bad word these days, but you're just giving students the ability to interact on top of that slide. So very similar to that, instead of just circling the items that start with a certain letter, maybe it's dragging a dot to a certain point on a map or a certain hemisphere as you guys are doing right now. And it looks like for the most part, we do in fact know which hemisphere is experiencing winter right now. We are doing well there. All right, no one probably showed up thinking you were going to get quizzed. These will not be graded, but let's just do one more for the fun of it. I saved potentially the most challenging for last, unless we have any current or former math teachers in the audience. I underestimated you guys. Everybody came in real quick with the correct answer, or close to the correct answer, and a few smiley faces drawn in there as well. So again, this has been entirely teacher paced, but knowing that you leading the discussion live in real time synchronously might not be the greatest fit. You might want to assign this as an assignment or activity to students. You can always do that any point along the way. So what I've done is these next two slides, I just want to show you real quickly on these next two slides how you can turn students out on their own in student pace mode. And so I'm going to do just that. I'm going to flip my classroom and I'm going to turn it over to you all. So I'm going to go down to my three little dots, my superpower down here in the bottom right-hand corner, and I'm going to turn on student pace mode. And because you're already in the lesson, if you just take a look at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, so on the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, Pear Deck has given you some arrows to toggle through the lesson at your own pace. And if you wanted to post this assignment on your LMS, Google Classroom, Schoology, Canvas, whatever that is, you could always just copy and paste that link right there. So I'll give everybody another couple of seconds here. I can tell you guys are taking this very seriously and really identifying the continents there. So we'll give everybody a little time to do this, and then I'll take back control in just a second. And if for whatever reason you've gotten bumped out of the session or aren't seeing arrows or continents, I will copy the link and post that right in the chat. So the most recent message there in the chat is for you to just join right in. It might just take a refresh on your screen as well to do the trick. Now, I think one of the beauties of Pear Deck here, and I don't think anybody really realized it until the shift to remote online learning, is that sometimes, although you flip your classroom, there's a trade-off of flipping your classroom, of the trade-off of losing those real-time insights, seeing students as they process through a question or an assignment. Now, I think it's really amazing is that within Pear Deck, because remember, you have that teacher dashboard behind the scenes. Within Pear Deck, I'm able to see my students, in this case, the 26 students that are working on identifying their continents. I see my 36 students that are working on dragging their dots. And I can see that progress even happening in real time. So we're seeing a lot of teachers like tweeting at us that, you know, sitting at home watching their 30 students work through a problem together in real time, which is pretty powerful. It's hard to recreate that environment and that experience for students when we're all working remotely here. So in just a second, fair warning, I'm going to take back controls from you guys so that we can get back to instructor paste mode and we're all back together again. So I'm going to do that in just a second. So fair warning as we're doing that. And we had a question in the chat about where are these templates, and if you jumped ahead or you passed dragging the dot to the noun, you'll see that slide 20 is our template library. That and many more resources will be included in that follow-up that was mentioned at the beginning that you will receive from us. That will include our template library that includes the hundreds of templates based on the time of class that you might use those questions, use those prompts, based on social emotional learning practices, critical thinking, and subject areas as well. And knowing my audience here, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that we just launched last week templates for library and media specialists or librarians. So keep an eye out for that. So you guys will get that in your inbox from us. So with that, very, very quickly, and then I'll turn it over to Kelly. You're probably asking yourselves, okay, if you've never seen Pear Deck, how did he do this? How do they do this? And it's pretty darn easy. Whether you're using Google Slides or PowerPoint, you're able to use Pear Deck within an add-on or add-in, regardless of the tool that you're using, and add those interactivity, add those layers of student engagement, add those formative assessments and checks for understanding into your existing lessons. And the final step is pretty darn easy. It's just presenting lesson with Pear Deck. So it is just 3 quick steps. This will be a part of the follow-up that you get from us. But I did just want to highlight this because I don't want anyone to leave here thinking that you know, Pear Deck is one new thing that you have to learn. You have to reinvent the wheel and start from scratch. It's really just a way to take something existing, an existing lesson or an activity like a Launchpack and make it interactive for your students. So with that, I will flip it over to Kelly.
Perfect. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. So we're going to go ahead and get started with another question for you to answer. We want to know how much you already know about Britannica Launchpacks. So you can choose from those options that are provided. Be honest, that's totally fair. There's a lot of Texas people in the house, so you may know Britannica school as you have a state contract, but maybe Launchpacks are new to you. All right, and as those results are coming in, I just want to say thank you all for being here. I know these are hard and confusing times for everyone, especially for students and educators, for you guys, so thank you. All right, so it looks like A and B, Launchpacks are new to a lot of people, and a lot of people may not have known about Launchpacks, but they grew up with a set of Britannica encyclopedias. You would be so surprised how many people tell us stories about these encyclopedias. We actually celebrated our 250th year of existence, our anniversary last year. So we're delighted to be partners in truth with you. And we're going to show you what we've been up to the last couple of years. So we're gonna go ahead and take a look at what a launch pack is, or what launch packs are, and they are bundles of diverse, high quality content. So really how they came around is that we kept hearing from educators that they were looking, I was a former educator, we were looking for high quality digital content, but there were two big barriers to use. One, either it would be a one size fits all, and we know no classroom is one size fits all, but also we couldn't, teachers were having trouble finding trusted content. They couldn't find published dates and citations, except for their citations, things like that. So one thing I do want to explain is that at Britannica, we do have an editorial process. So we have fact checkers, we have editorial standards, we have content specific editors, and we have this process. It's 5 or 6 eyes go through a content piece before it's actually published in any of our resources. So it's definitely trusted. The other barrier to use is that, as I mentioned, it was one size fits all. So, and you're going to see all of this when we get into the launch packs. I'm just kind of giving you guys a heads up. With Britannica launch packs, you can, we have images, videos, articles, primary source documents, interactive pieces. These are all in there. And within that, there are a lot of support tools. So one of the things that I want you guys, and I tell everyone, is just how easy this tool is for sharing content. So if you're in the beginning of this e-learning, this remote learning journey, and I just got a Google Classroom, I'll show you right away how you can easily share the content. If you are at the spot, or you're thinking ahead to what next year might look like, where you're going back with students, and maybe you're doing more of a blended learning type approach, we have, you'll be able to use the content and share it easily with your students as well. And then our resource also encourages active use in supporting critical thinking and ELA skills. You guys are the teachers, the educators, you know how to teach. There are just things in our products and things that our product does to help you do that. So I'm actually going to jump into the resource itself really quickly. Here I am at pax.eb.com, and we're going to take an overview of this homepage, but I do want to point out that when we're talking about launch packs, there are 2,000 social studies launch packs and also 2,000 science launch packs that we're offering now as part of our COVID-19 relief support. The Pear Decks that we're going to be using today are all in our social studies resource, so we'll be highlighting those. There are about 200 Pear Deck activities that are already in these launch packs, and they are all within 6th through 8th grade. And again, you're going to see this. But I did want to point out that one, you do have access to Launchpack Science. I also want to point out that Pear Decks can be added to any launch pack. And then also the ones that we already have can easily be scaled up and scaled down. So this is the overview, the homepage of the resource. It's a Pinboard view. It's really engaging and inviting for students to jump in. When we're thinking about locating content, the first thing I'm going to do is filter down my grade level. So we have content at the K through 2 level, 3 through 5, 6 through 8, and 9 through 12. I'm going to choose 6 through 8 today. We also can filter by category. So again, as you're thinking about, what you might use as routines and procedures for using Pear Decks and Launchpacks together, or the content that you are, covering or would have been covering right now, definitely check out the different categories that we have there. You can always locate content by just performing a search. I'm typing in ancient Greece, and before I perform my search on this, I do want to show you that you can search by standard as well. So for social studies, we do have ELA standards and the social studies state standards. And then in Launchpack Science, we have ELA standards and GSS, and then the state standards as well. So I'm going to go ahead and perform that search, and I'm going to get my 6th through 8th grade results for ancient Greece. So again, you can see here that these are my results. My grades are along at the bottom. All of these are 6 through 8. I'm going to end up using this ancient Greece origins and geography. But again, as I was looking for content, you can see what every pack has right from this page. So we have 5 articles, 5 images, 1 video, 1 website, and 1 Pear Deck. Again, there can be also interactives, infographics, learning activities, things like that. I'm going to enter this pack so we can talk about it. And once we get through this pack and just kind of an overview, I am going to take you in using these as a live student using a Pear Deck activity that's found in Launchpacks. So I'm already logged into my personal account right here. You can see that my name is in the top right corner. And if I scroll down, I have access to all of those different content pieces, those images, those videos, those articles, and the Pear Deck is at the bottom. So if this is good, I am ready, my students can use this right away, I can take this pack and directly begin sending it to my students. So I can just share it directly to my Google Classroom. I can send it to my Microsoft Teams. If for some reason, I'm using a different LMS, I can take this unique link. Every single Launchpack has its own unique link, and I can take that link and post that to my LMS. And if for some reason, you're sharing it with a coworker, or maybe your parents, but some of the parents of your students are still using email, you can email it to them as well. So right from the jump, you can share that content as is. We're going to again get into some of the content and the support and features that you'll find in every Launchpack, but I do want to point out 2 other options here. So we also have the ability to customize a pack. So in this mode, what I can do is I can change the displayed reading levels. I can add personal content. I can delete content that's outside of the scope of my lesson. So just all of those different options are there. And again, you're going to see some of that as we go through that. I can also assign activities. So this is an additional option where we have question sets that can be assigned to students via the Launchpacks platform. And these work on comprehension skills, making predictions, making inferences, things like that. And any of those, if you customize a pack, if you add an activity, again, those can all directly be shared really easily with your students. So we're going to get into discussing the marriage of Britannica's content and the Pear Deck engagement activities. But before I do that, I want to show you how you would launch a Pear Deck activity from within a pack. So as an educator, I'm scrolling down, I'm going to find my Launchpack, or pardon me, I'm going to find my Pear Deck activity card, and I'm going to go ahead and click on it. As a teacher, this opens up as a copy, or a copy to the file. So this will make a copy of the file just to your Google Drive. As a student, if I see this and I clicked on that Pear Deck card in my Launchpack, I would actually see that joinpd.com, just like you opened up another tab and typed that URL in, students would see that URL and be able to join. So again, as an educator, it's going to have me copy the file. I am already logged into my Google account, my Gmail account, and I'm also already logged into my Pear Deck Premium account. I'm going to go ahead and make that copy so it is all mine, which means I can make changes to the questions. I can add additional questions in there. I can use it as is. And Nick already pointed this out, but just so you guys, if you're thinking about this tomorrow and you're like, how did she launch that? All of the instructions are in every single pack. So once you're in, you've copied the file, you can go ahead and begin to run the add-on. Now, I'm not going to run this today, or quite yet, because that would defeat the purpose that we're going to show you in just a second. But right now, as Nick said, these are not interactive slides, so we would want to run that add-on to go ahead and make them interactive. So we are actually going to switch gears here, and I'm going to jump in to the class and join as a student. So this is going to be the full experience. Let's see, I'm going to resume my share. All right, so just another recap. Nick is still presenting as the teacher on the back end, and I'm going to show you the student experience, and I can show you the Britannica content and the features that your students have access to this. I do want to say, if you are someone who likes to follow along with multiple screens and you also do not have access to your Launchpacks yet, the resource might look like it's asking for access information. Don't worry about that. I'm acting as a student that already has that information, and that's been set up through our COVID-19 support resources. But we are sharing more information about that in our follow-up email. So if you don't have access information, we'll get it to you. Okay, Nick, I am ready. If you could just set me to student pace mode or confirm that I am.
You are good to go.
All right. Let me see here. So I am going to get to, you guys do not need to see the whole presentation again. So let me jump to where we will be starting. Okay, so you can see here, I am taking you through this Pear Deck activity as a student would, and I'm going to take a little extra time as we go through these content pieces that were chosen for this Pear Deck activity and point out the student supports and the content tools that support the teaching and learning that will be going on. So I've joined the class. My first task is to watch this overview video. So I have a video here and I'm going to play it in just a second, but I do want to point out with all of our videos, they can be emailed. We do have automatic citations. All the librarians cheer whenever we show this, and I love it. It's one of my favorite pieces. We have 4 different citation styles, so you can scaffold those conversations that you're having with students about citations. And then you can always download any of the videos as well. I'm going to play the video really quickly for you.
Ancient Greece advanced politics, philosophy, and art in exceptional ways that influence Western civilization to this day.
I'm not going to play the whole thing. You're not going to have to answer these, but you can see this is just a 3-minute video. We do have closed captioning that could be taken off if you wanted. We also have the full text underneath. So if I'm a student, again, in these times of remote learning, that I might need that text to listen to it once and then read it myself. That might be beneficial. When I'm done with the video and I'm ready to move on, I'm in student pace mode. So again, I can kind of start one of those check for understandings. So I have a map here. I'm going to place the yellow flag to indicate the Mediterranean Sea. So I'm going to drag and drop that. The green one, I'm guessing, is close to Athens, right there. And then the red flag is for Sparta. So again, on the back end, you're getting this information, but as a student, I am just working through it. So you're gathering results and you're deciding what or if you might go over on a Zoom. Maps can be hard for a lot of students. Maybe I'm going to insert this slide into a couple of their lessons and see if they, if this is something I need to reteach or not. All right, so the next piece, the next slide tells me to read the Greek city states and their colonies. So it's a portion of the article, and the article is along the right-hand side of my screen as a student. I'm going to start by pointing out some of those supports because, again, we as educators, you know, when you're in the classroom with students, you know the supports that they need. That's one of the hardest things of not being in the same room with them. And so we really have some built-in supports to help with that. The first thing I want to point out are these reading levels. So we have this article, we searched the 6th through 8th grade Launchpacks, so we are all set to our middle school reading level. If this article is too hard for a lot of our students, or some of our students, if they're below grade level for reading skills, they could actually access the elementary article, but the look and feel stays the same. So it's going to stay in this age appropriate interface. I can also jump up if I need more as well. And sometimes we even like to talk about how these are, you know, if you need to go back and learn something, maybe we don't have any background knowledge for ancient Greece, I can go and start with that level 1 article and then bump up and continue to 2 and read that support and have that support there. We also have page tools, and these tools are built into every single article within Launchpacks. So I can increase the font if I need to. So again, if in a student's IEP, that modification is something that we're thinking about, we're trying to meet, that's there. It also just makes the text a little bit less intimidating for students as well. A lot of schools right now are, you know, doing packets as well as e-learning, because different schools and different students have different resources and devices. We do have the ability to print a lot of our, or all of our articles, as well as some of our other resources. I did mention citations already, but I wanted to point those out once again. And then we also have the ability to translate this article, and this is one of my favorite pieces. So I can translate this article into one of 80 different languages. This is powered by Google Translate, but where we have seen this be so helpful is with, of course, with students that English is their second language, but especially during this time with that home to school connection. For parents that English is their second language. So now they can help support the students. They can have the article. You can toggle between both the original article and the translated version as well. And then you can also make excerpts for students. So if there are students that you know, need a shorter portion, maybe even the subheading would be too long, you can make an excerpt for them and put that in the pack as well. All right, I'm about ready to finish my task here, but I want to point out one other feature that I absolutely love. It is called the Quick Click Dictionary. So if I'm a student and I'm reading along and I come to a word that I don't understand, I can double click on that word. I get the definition of that word, the pronunciation, and then also the Spanish translation. So a great vocabulary building tool within the context and the content that you're talking about with your students. All right, so let's go ahead. I'm going to use my table of contents. I'm going to head down to the Greek city-states and we're going to look through the contents. Now, one thing I haven't pointed out yet is if this article does skew to be a little bit too hard for some of your students, or if you have auditory learners that just need the article read to them, it can be. So let me play this for you.
The Greek city-states and their colonies.
I can't think and speak and listen to her at the same time, but you can see that the text was highlighted for students. So again, it's reinforcing those fluency skills as they read along. Some of those things that you would be reminding them to do with their fingers if they had a book in front of them and you next to them. But it also is, again, just a great way to kind of have the article, to interact with the article. So as we go through this content, you can see that we're talking about how the Greek city-states kind of became what they were. We have pictures to add context, again, to the text that they're reading. We're talking about the geography and what made how the setup and the landscape really affected how they could defend themselves, how they could trade, how people in ancient Greece lived, and how they also set up their cities. So we're just talking about that. Now as a student, I have an image to kind of find, okay, where is the Acropolis? Okay, where is that? Oh, what is the stadium or the theater? As we keep going, you can see I'm still in this portion. I'm learning about the different shorelines, things like that. Oh, and oh, man, I forgot to show you one of my favorite pieces, and I have to be turned on for this. I'm going to click on annotations, and then I'm going to go back to my Greek city-state. I knew something was off. All right. So now the other tool that we have is that your students can take citations, take notes right in the article when they're in annotation mode. This little pencil pops up and I can take my annotation or had a democracy. And then they can really interact with it. And they have to think about this. So is this just a comment for me? Am I asking a question? Is this is something going to help me with my vocabulary? Maybe a word I didn't know? Am I reading for evidence here? Is this a summary or just a connection that I have? And you can see that those annotations follow along with the student as they work through this portion too. They can always delete that if they need to as well. So we're done with our section. We're ready to move on to our next check for understanding. So I just read all about this. I'm going to add, this is a true or false slide. As I go to the next one, again, I'm getting brave, so I'm going to pick a color. And again, I'm just kind of seeing what are my students, how are my students interacting with the text? What are they learning? How are they synthesizing that information? There were islands, we had many coastal settlements. We'll mark those as well. And then the last one is going to be a short answer or a check for comprehension. So I'm going to go in there. I'm going to start typing about the geography, maybe what I learned. This can be your exit ticket. Again, as we all talk to the teachers and principals in our lives, we're thinking about what next year education might look like. And again, keep this in mind, because these might be the things that, you know, what else did you need to know? You're discussing when you have all your students together back in your Zoom or things like that. And then I get to do one final check with my students. How do you think the understanding of the geography went? So if I'm a student and I'm really feeling like, hey, I'm sorry, Ms. Johns, I might need some more support here, I can circle how I'm feeling about that as well. And that is an example of a Pear Deck activity within Britannica Launchpacks.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah.
Well, great timing. That gives us some time for Q&A at the end. But I do want to make sure I'll take over the screen here. So you should be able to see my screen now. Did just want to be sure to let everyone know to keep an eye out for those resources from us that you'll receive in your inbox in regards to using Pear Deck, to using the Launchpacks to keep your students connected and stay connected with them throughout the remainder of the school year. And we also have information on where you can find us today as well. Now, we did want to end with some Q&A as well. So if you do have those questions, feel free just to drop those in the chat. And it does look like we have some questions coming in through Pear Deck as well. So feel free to ask those questions, and we'll spend a little bit of time doing that. If you don't have any questions at all, before you leave, I do just want to say, take a second and say thank you, not just for joining us today, but for all you're doing right now to keep students engaged, keep them connected over the next couple weeks and months, and who knows how long. So thank you from both of us for coming today and learning a little bit more about both Pear Deck, Britannica, and how you can use the two tools together. From there, we will keep a close eye on the chat and make sure that we don't end without any unanswered questions. And Kelly, anything else on your end or your guys' end?
No, again, I also just want to say thank you guys. And if you have any questions, feel free to, in that follow-up email, shoot us an email. One of the things that you will get in that follow-up email, in addition to the access information for both of our resources, is a list of which packs already have Pear Deck activities. So if that's something you want to start next week, you can do that as well.
And there's a couple of questions here about the certificates of attendance. And I believe, Nick, is there one that comes, or the ability to have them fill out something?
Absolutely.
Automatically, okay.
Yep, you'll get that from us, and you can just download that as a PDF.
Great.
We had a couple questions come in on Pear Deck here. I don't know, Kelly, Darcy, if you want to take any of these.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. Where can I find the step-by-step setup to try this? You'll get information for next steps in that follow-up email, and then we'll continue to help you set you up. Right now, one of my favorite parts of my job is I don't know the costs or have to worry about the costs for Launchpacks right now, and it's a really interesting time. So we are offering these packs through the end of this school year, but we can definitely get you in contact to see, and once we know what next year will even look like as well. I don't love Greece history. I just want to go there right now. I get you. I feel you. I think we all feel you.
I'm with you, Helen.
Yeah.
Here's one from Jackie. Where can I find, do I need to download an extension to make it work? Great question, Jackie. As long as you have that Pear Deck add-on or add-in, that's the only thing that you need to use for Pear Deck to work. We do have an add-on and add-in, and there also is a Chrome extension. That's not necessary for it to work. I certainly recommend that you have it. Both of the instructions to get both of those two tools are going to be in that follow-up email, so you can do that yourself. So definitely make sure you have the add-on or add-in. The extension is certainly recommended. And then from a student's perspective, so when assigning these activities to your students, when sending them a lunch pack to go through on their own, they do not need to download anything. All they need is an email account to join in. Ashley had a question about changing the images in the templates, which is a great question. Our templates are just that, they're templates. It's not necessarily content. We're not saying this is the most perfect question that you should ask your students, only you know that. As far as editing the images within the templates, as soon as you drop those into your lesson, whether that's Google Slides or PowerPoint, you can edit those just like you would in that normal presentation tool. So you can just delete those right off and import in your own images. We always encourage you to copy, edit, and make them your own. Even the launch packs, as Kelly mentioned. So even the launch packs, go in and tweak those to you and your students, and add your Bitmoji on the opening slide, and anything else that you would normally do with your students in that physical classroom. See how you can translate that into the online virtual classroom as well. Haidee had a question around if the other webinars we're running this week cover similar material. Yes, they do. So you're welcome to come back, but it will be very similar to what we did today. But I know on Pear Deck, there are several different opportunities for webinars if you want to come and learn more about different ways that you can use the tool.
Same for Britannica. We're also running a series right now. So if you if you sign up for the Launchpacks access, you'll get that information as well. So you can choose from any of those.
So Kelsey, Darcy, what do you think on this one? So do you envision this presented whole group real time in best scenarios? What have you guys seen?
Yeah. I think whole group might look a little different when we go back. But I'm guessing that if I was going to do this with a whole group in real time, are you saying now, or are you saying in person? Sorry, Diane, if you can.
Yeah, we'll see if they choose to. It's Diane. If Diane chooses to expand, I think it might be like the Launchpacks, or the Launchpacks best suited for synchronous or asynchronous.
Yeah, I mean,
learning.
you can really use it either way. I mean, how I see myself using it and have used it regular in school, like she's saying, is assigning it and then giving them some choice. You know, maybe I'm pulling, I taught third grade. So I would have pulled a reading group, and while students might be, working through the Pear Deck and the activity, you really can, adjust the kids in the group and then go over their information with that. You can do it whole group. I think the best thing about these is you can try out what feels good for both you and your students.
Great. And then I have two that I have to punt over to you guys.
Okay.
But the final two at the bottom here, it looks like about the last two questions that we have.
Great question. So the question is, if we fill out the COVID-19 form, about how long does it take to get access codes to the ED packs? Honestly, it takes usually between, we're supposed to say 24 hours, but it's usually less than that. Our support staff have been churning out these access ID codes within, 4 hours, so really quickly. And if anybody in your district has also already signed up for it, or if you already have a Britannica resource that you may not know of, we'll get you that information, and those codes will be the same as well. Great question. So students have to access PACS before they can start the Pear Deck. Yes, so if they are using this with PACS, they do have to be logged into that personal account, as well as a teacher that needs to be logged into the personal account to use that PACS. Great questions.
Awesome. Well, knowing we're right up against the time here, we will end it at that. But thanks again for everyone for joining us. Keep an eye out on your inbox. You have plenty more resources heading your way to help you get started. We appreciate all of you. Thanks from me, from Pear Deck.
Yes, and thank you. Sorry, I'm still reading the chat. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great night.